room. Madam Vice President?
Thank you. We welcome everyone attending this morning, both in person and online. We want to ensure all members of the public can access our meetings. So if you need any translation services or accommodations, we encourage you to contact the board secretary in advance of our meetings as explained in our written agenda. These meetings are regular meetings between the board, the department, and key stakeholders. We welcome feedback from the public during the public comment period, which will be heard during item number 2 on the agenda. Public comment is your opportunity to address the board. You can speak to any item on the agenda or any matter within the jurisdiction of the Board of Police Commissioners. We will dedicate a total of 45 minutes to public comment. As explained in the written agenda, each member of the public can have a total of up to 3 minutes to speak if you wish to speak on both agenda items and general public comment. While we welcome public attendance at our meetings, disruptive behavior will not be tolerated and will be cause for removal. You will receive just one warning, and if you continue disrupting the meeting, you will be asked to leave and be removed from the meeting. At this time, we will move to item number 1 on the agenda, the report of the Chief of Police. Chief McDonald.
Morning, Vice President Shields, Commissioners, Inspector General Barragon, City Attorney De La Guerra, and Mr. Sibley. Today I'll be discussing significant events from the previous week, providing a crime update, and discussing our personnel strength. We had an officer-involved shooting in West Valley on April 20th at about 17:55 hours. A radio call was generated for an assault with a deadly weapon suspect at 6425 Reseda Boulevard. The comments of the call indicated that the suspect, identified as Yervand Sorobian, was trespassing while armed with a handgun and shouting obscenities. An LAPD air unit arrived overhead and observed Sorobian armed with a handgun, and from the air unit, the tactical flight officer directed Sorobian via the public address system to drop the handgun. Instead, Sorobian pointed and fired his handgun at the air unit, which prompted a help call to be broadcast. West Valley area uniformed officers responded and were directed to Sorobian, who was inside the apartment complex. Sorobian proceeded to an alley adjacent to the building while still armed with the handgun. The officers contacted Sorobian and ordered him to drop his weapon. Sorobian refused to comply, and a 40 millimeter less lethal launcher was discharged towards Sorobian, but proved to be ineffective. Sorobian then pointed his handgun at the officers, resulting in an officer-involved shooting. During the incident, Sorobian fired multiple rounds at officers. He was struck by gunfire, fell to the ground in proximity to the handgun. Sorobian was then taken into custody without further incident. Officers at the scene rendered aid to Sorobian until the arrival of Los Angeles Fire Department personnel, who assessed Sorobian and determined him to be deceased. A Smith & Wesson 6-shot revolver with 6 fired cartridge casings inside the cylinder was recovered next to Sorobian and booked as evidence. No officers or other community members were injured as a result of the incident, and Force Investigation Division investigators responded to the scene and are in charge of the investigation of this incident. Year to date, we've had 11 officer-involved shootings, which is the same number as compared to last year at this same time. We had a serial rapist that was captured. Between March of 2024 and April of 2025, LAPD investigators from Northeast Division and the Family Justice Center worked diligently on a series of disturbing sexual assault cases involving a suspect with a consistent violent pattern and matching description. The incidents shared common elements. Each involved vulnerable victims, many of whom are unhoused or struggling with addiction, and all were assaulted at the same abandoned residence located at 1413 Portia Street in the Echo Park area. The first reported incident occurred in March of 2024, and over the next several months, additional victims came forward, each describing similarly violent and traumatic experiences. Investigators conducted extensive follow-up work, coordinating interviews, forensics exams, and scene analysis, and ultimately connected the crimes through both victim testimony and forensic evidence. Through the efforts of our detectives, the suspect was positively identified. A search warrant was served at the Portia Street location in March of 2025, leading to the recovery of critical physical evidence. Shortly thereafter, DNA evidence linked the suspect to multiple victims, and the district attorney filed multiple felony charges with bail set at $1.9 million. With the assistance of the Metropolitan Division, the suspect was located and taken into custody on April 11th. He's currently in custody, and detectives are continuing their work to finalize the remaining cases from this year. Significant robbery arrest on April 18th. Officers from LAPD Rampart Division were briefed on an ongoing robbery series involving multiple suspects in a blue Hyundai Sonata. The briefing included detailed descriptions of both the suspects and the suspect vehicle. Later that evening at about 8:45 p.m., 4 suspects committed a robbery at a 7-Eleven located at 3555 West Temple Street in Rampart Division. One suspect entered the store armed with a handgun, while the others took property from inside. All 4 fled the scene in a blue Hyundai Sonata. A crime broadcast was quickly issued to alert neighboring divisions. At approximately 10 p.m., Alhambra Police Department initiated a pursuit of suspects wanted for an armed robbery in their jurisdiction. During the pursuit, the suspect's vehicle was lost in the central area of Los Angeles. LAPD Area Unit 18, monitoring Alhambra's radio frequency, located the vehicle and relayed its location to Central Patrol units. Unbeknownst to Alhambra PD, these were the same suspects involved in an earlier armed robbery in Los Angeles. Central officers observed the vehicle and attempted to conduct a traffic stop, but the driver fled, prompting officers to initiate a pursuit. The pursuit lasted approximately an hour and passed through multiple divisions, including Southwest. During the chase, 3 passengers exited the vehicle and fled on foot. 2 of them were detained, and 1 remains outstanding. The driver continued to flee until colliding with a tree at Gramercy Place and West 62nd Street, where he was taken into custody. This group is believed to be responsible for at least 5 robberies across the city of Los Angeles, which include 2 7-Eleven locations, 2 taco stands, and 1 pedestrian robbery. Rampart detectives are leading the investigation and are working closely with detectives from LASD, as well as Northeast Division, Alhambra Police Department, and the Baldwin Park Police Department, as these agencies are also investigating crimes potentially linked to the same suspects. The case will be presented to the District Attorney's Office this week for filing consideration. Info on a South American theft group arrest. On April 17th, detectives from the Multi-Target Task Force responded to a residential burglary at 6655 Bobby Boyer Avenue in Topanga area. This incident is linked to an ongoing investigation into a South American theft group burglary crew, which has been under surveillance by the MTTF and the Los Angeles or LA Impact team. The crew had previously committed a burglary in the city of Burbank and was later observed casing homes in the North Hollywood area. On the day of the Topanga burglary, LA Impact was actively monitoring the suspects when they observed one of the vehicles follow the victim to a Harbor Freight store. While the victim was inside, a suspect punctured the tires of his car, presumably to delay his return. Meanwhile, a second suspect vehicle went to the victim's residence, broke the rear glass door, and gained entry. A third vehicle acted as a lookout. The suspect stole various items, including jewelry, coins, firearms, designer handbags, sunglasses, and bottles of cologne. As the suspects attempted to flee, LA Impact requested assistance for a felony stop. The California Highway Patrol responded and pursued the suspects when they fled on foot. LAPD units were called in to assist, and after a short foot chase, all 4 suspects were taken into custody. LA Impact positively identified them at the scene. The stolen property was recovered from the suspect's vehicle and later confirmed by the victim. MTTF detectives documented the evidence and returned the items to the victim. All 4 suspects are Colombian nationals and were arrested for residential burglary. A significant case of vandalism to city property on April 19th, about 1:20 in the morning. Central Division patrol officers responded to a vandalism call in the area of 350 Grand Avenue. Upon arrival, officers discovered multiple city trees along the sidewalk had been intentionally cut down. 5 trees along Grand Avenue and 2 trees along Broadway. Surveillance footage from the area captured a lone suspect wearing dark clothing, riding a bicycle and using a power saw to cut down the trees. Central area detectives have assumed investigative responsibility and are currently reviewing additional surveillance and canvassing for witnesses to help identify the suspect and determine a motive. As of the week ending April 19th, for the 4-week period, the department saw an overall decrease of 11.6 in combined person and property crimes compared to the prior 4 weeks. That represents 1,012 fewer crimes. Homicide remains down year-to-date with a 29.3% decrease compared to this time last year, and that's 27 fewer lives lost. Citywide year-to-date victims shot are down by nearly 11% compared to 2024, and the latest 4-week period victim shot was essentially flat, down just 1.5% or one fewer victim. Aggravated assaults were up slightly, 1.8% or 20 more incidents over the previous 4-week period. Robberies rose by 13.8%, a total of 72 additional cases. Notable upticks were seen in Olympic, 77th, Southwest, and Mission. Strong-arm robberies made up nearly half of all robberies and were up 14.2%, or 35 more cases. Firearm-involved robberies accounted for 23% of robberies and were up 10.6%, or 13 more cases. Retail-related locations, or Estes-type robberies, were also up significantly. On the positive side, burglary saw an 18.1% decrease citywide, with all 4 bureaus showing a decline. Residential burglaries declined by 14.7%, and non-residential burglaries dropped by nearly 18%. Motor vehicle thefts fell by 10.3% over the 4-week period, or 170 fewer incidents. On the personnel front, our personnel strength for sworn personnel as of April 21st is 8,735. Civilian professional staff is at 2,650, and reserve officers remains at 361. Madam Vice President, that concludes my report to the Commission this morning.
Thank you, Chief. I'll start with questions from other commissioners. Commissioner Sanchez-Gordon.
Morning.
Thank you so much for your report. It's very complete. A lot of it, excuse me. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Chief.
Morning.
Thank you so much for your report. It's very comprehensive, and it looks like everyone's been very, very busy. The thing that stands out with me is the aggravated assaults up a
Right.
little bit, robberies, strong-arm robberies up,
Right.
retail burglary up. So knowing that these numbers are going up, what is the plan to keep them at a decrease as so many other things have decreased?
Yeah, we do a very exhaustive analysis of all the patterns, trends, and clusters of crime that we see on an ongoing basis. I get a report from our CompStat unit every Monday, and we're drilling down into this. We often see upticks and then reductions as arrests are made. So there's a lot of cases being worked right now that will result in arrests and be able to affect that. And so we're watching. There's no significant gang issues across the city, inter-gang rivalries or shootings that have driven those numbers. So we focus on them, and we're hopeful we'll be able to turn that around.
Thank you. I also wanted to let you know that I saw that critical incident community briefing on YouTube. And I have to say that I applaud you for that.
Thanks.
Because I think it's so important that the community have access to information that is happening in the community, and the step-by-step bird's eye view of really what happens and how LAPD is handling these things. And some of them are hard to see, but I think that there is some level of transparency there.
Right.
that allows the community to have that information. And I think that, especially on the officer-involved shootings, it is a source of information that presents, again, a bird's eye view of what the officers are involved in, quick decisions that need to be made, and sometimes, all the challenges that I think that our cities are facing. Also, so anyway, on the critical incident community briefing, Chief, I think it's a good idea that you continue with that on the YouTube channel. In addition to that, Chief, I'm also requesting that in addition to your crime report and incident report, that you provide us a weekly report on what's going on in our community with the following: where ICE is present in the city, what communities are ICE targeting in the communities? How many arrests have ICE made in those targeted areas that they are visiting on a weekly basis, on a daily basis? And when is the LAPD present during those arrests? I think that our multi-ethnic immigrant community in Los Angeles is really paralyzed by fear. Every day, all day, you hear about what the immigrant community is going through. And I know that LAPD has met with many nonprofits, churches, clergy, to instruct them, to give them information about what LAPD is doing in our city. But I think that the paralysis of fear in our community is such, in our immigrant community is such, that some are even considering self-deporting and not going through the trauma of ICE arrest, a sudden ICE arrest. So they'd rather leave their city, leave their home, leave their country, leave their family. So if this information is provided, and I am requesting it, I think it gives our community a level of dignity so that they can know where ICE is in our city, how many arrests are being made, and also whether LAPD or not, whether LAPD is in fact they're just for crowd control, traffic control, or any other reason control. So I think that's an important thing, Chief, and I would like that report incorporated in our weekly in your weekly report.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. I'll work with the executive director in doing that. I'll just let you know that a lot of the information that you're looking for is not available to us because we don't work with ICE doing civil immigration enforcement. So we'll tell you what
Ma'am,
we...
that's your first warning. Please let the chief continue.
We'll share what we have, but it won't be a complete picture because we don't know. They don't book at our facilities. They book at federal facilities.
Well, okay, I understand that, Chief, but I think that if anybody has access to that information, it would be LAPD, and whatever information that you can obtain for the commission would be welcomed, and especially very welcome for the community at this point in time in our city. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Garcia.
Thank you, Chief. Good morning.
Commissioner, good morning.
I'd like to request something to the Inspector General, and this will be an ongoing conversation with him in the office around conducting an audit of the use of force training and a report back. And if possible, we can set up some time to sit down and go through what specifically would be most important and where it is that we potentially can find an opportunity to improve not only the training, but obviously ultimately the outcomes of the context that officers have around those pieces. Thank you.
Thank you. And Chief, I just had a couple questions. First, with regards to the officer-involved shooting, I think anytime there's an officer-involved shooting, it's a tragedy. And it's unfortunate that this person was not only shooting at an air unit, but also shooting at officers multiple rounds. And it's unfortunate that it had to end the way it did. Again, I haven't seen the video and we'll adjudicate that at a later date. But just a question in terms of, how dangerous is it if someone's shooting at an air unit? Was there any damage? Is there any, implication in the flight, anything like that?
Yeah, thank you. On this case, I'm not aware of any damage to they did an inspection of the air unit, no hits on it that we're aware of, but the potential there, if you were to strike the pilot, you could have the helicopter crashing into whatever's down below it at the time. Tremendous potential for a major loss of life. And so very, very critical incident. He was also firing into the residences there and then at officers. So this was a serious case.
Thank you. And major kudos to all of the significant arrests that occurred, and particularly with the arrest of the serial rapist who was targeting our most vulnerable communities. And I'd say I'd commend the officers for taking those types of complaints seriously and making sure that sexual assaults on people who are unhoused or addicted are actually taken seriously and investigated fully. I think that's an important message to send so that people don't target this community in particular for all of their crimes. And so thank you for that, and congratulations to all of the officers who did that good work. One thing with regards to, and it may be too soon to tell, but with regards to the budget, and there's going to be significant cuts into the civilian portion of the department. And we often say that the civilian personnel are the backbone of the department and really allow the department to function. Do you have any sense of how this is going to impact the department's operations?
Well, it's going to certainly have an impact. We're going to have to look and see what is it we're no longer going to be able to do. When we talk about reports and a lot of the administrative things that we're able to provide, some of those we're not going to be able to provide, or not as quickly, certainly. And the impact will be felt throughout the organization and to the public. Things, as ordinary as getting a copy of a crime report or a copy of a traffic accident report, or those things, all of those are going to be impacted because there's fewer people to be able to do those jobs. And there will be some officers that'll have to come out of the field to be able to provide for the administrative support that keeps the organization running. So certainly the impacts will be significant.
Thank you. Okay, we will, thank you, Chief, for the report, and fellow commissioners for your questions. Moving on to item number 2 on the agenda, public comment. Madam Secretary, please call on the first speaker.
On the first card, we have W.S. Snyder.
Morning. Smoking scam? What's the scam here? These shootings. That's the scam, shootings. Shooting people because of their mental health. Now, the problem I find offensive is that, under case number 0950529211, United States versus Pasadena, the term shoot the country is the reason why we shoot people that are disabled. Because this fucking country is fucked. I'm tired of hearing of people being shot over this fucking crisis we've developed in America. This fucking country. There we go. Yeah, now I don't have to speak out loud, Mr. Carlos. Did you get the case number, foo? 09505229, Bagdasarian versus United States? Isn't that a threat? Not. But the threat that I'm testifying about is whether or not the factual idea of cadets in these programs are being fucked by cops. Who's supervising these children with cops? Because we know for a fact the Pope is dead and he's going to hell. And we definitely know it's not off topic. I'm talking about death.
You're off topic.
It may seem morbid to you, but I'm talking about the death of the Pope.
You're off topic.
And how he prays for LAPD officers not to end up in the same situation. So you see, in Snyder versus Phelps, yeah, I'm talking about
You're off topic.
faggots.
You're off topic.
How could that be off topic?
Off topic.
I'm
Move on.
talking about
Move on.
simplify
Move on.
fucking faggots.
Move on.
All right, I'll move on. Look at this fucking donation here. Why aren't the fucking donations posted for the public to read where it's coming from? Because I know Raja's getting money from developers and those goddamn oil refinery people. Where's the money going? That's the reason why we lost 400 LAPD to that fucked up budget. That fucked up budget by the fucked up mayor, by the fucking assholes in Sacramento. Am I off fucking topic?
No.
Good.
You're repetitive now.
That's
Move on.
right.
Move
Because
on.
I have a right to be repetitive. I have mental health problems like
No.
you, Carlos.
No, you don't.
42
Move on.
USC 1983 politely. Fuck you.
Jonathan Foster.
Hello, Jonathan Foster. I called a lot of the city council today and asked for more money for the LAPD and 18,000 officers. That's what I called. Several. I'm going to keep calling. I'm going to go over this one. Vanessa Pham. I talked about her. She was killed by an illegal alien that you seem to support, that's scared to be here. The reason this happened, he killed her with a knife in her car in Virginia. The illegal from Guatemala was able to get into her car because he said he needed help to take care of his baby. And then he'd take her to the emergency room. So he got in the car and he knifed her up and killed her. You're wrong, lady. You're wrong. On mental illness, I wonder how much sugar are they on? Have they had proper sleep? Are they on any omega-3s, which they need? Do they eat raw vegetables? How much caffeine are they on? Do they eat a multivitamin? And what are their interaction with the mental professionals? And this is what happened to Wilver Blanco, Takar Smith, Linda Becerra Moran, and Yang Yang. And Yang Yang's, they sanitized his crime scene, which is an obstruction of justice, right? So the officer also, it falls under a reasonable officer. Do you consider that reasonable? Really? That's not reasonable. They shot all four of these people, and yet I've requested net guns, right? And then, as I said, this officer actually has to endure that he shot and killed somebody, which is something I'd like to avoid for the police officers. We could start right in LA, and it'll spread across the nation. You could be legendary today, but we don't know if you're going to amount to a damn thing. And Wilver Blanco was shot 5 times by each officer. That's 10 times. It's like exceeding. Yeah, I'll try it. President Robert Saltzman, Vice President Shane Goldsmith, Commissioner Sandra Figueroa Villa, Commissioner James Farrell, Commissioner Gulf Walker. What does it matter what we call your names? This thing does the same thing all the time. It has no accountability and no justice. What matters is what your names are. We don't even need 5 of you people. It just operates as a killer constantly. I want to make another correction. I keep calling this guy Jose Espinoza, and his name is Pedro Espinoza, and he shot Jamil Shaw in the face. Shot him 1 time, and then he put his hands up, and then he shot through his hand and hit him in the face and killed him. And you support these people. You're worried that they're scared. I hope they are scared, and I hope they do leave.
Next over Zoom, we have Jojo.
Hi, this is somebody that's very concerned about how you're in bed with the cult of Scientology. I'm very concerned that you overpass the people that are protesting this cult and you favor the cult that is harboring criminals, allowing child trafficking to occur. This is all over the news. This is not a hate crime because as a Jew, I must tell you that we just had Holocaust Remembrance Day and we speak up for the victims. And it's not a hate crime because they are doing the very hateful things inside that was done to the Jews during the Holocaust. How can you stand by there? Because all of you, once this cult goes down, maybe you will be in a Simon Wiesenthal kind of center that you have in Los Angeles, but instead it will be a Scientology survivor Memorial Museum. And all of your faces will be on there because you allowed the help sign to be overpassed when people were calling in. You allowed those 2 children not to be rescued from whatever atrocity is going on in there. This is well documented. For you to deny that this cult is committing atrocities is very much like you saying the Holocaust never occurred. How can you live with yourselves in bed with a child trafficking cult? It's disgraceful. We speak out for victims because we are their advocates. Look at the case in Waterbury, Connecticut that's going on. The child that was 11 years old held 20 years in his house by the stepmother. He had to set a fire to let himself be free. Her name was Kimberly Sullivan. How many Kimberly Sullivans are in the cult right now, holding kids captive, locked in rooms? This is well documented. When are you going to wake up and stand up with the protesters that are trying to wake you guys up? You are in bed with child traffickers. You are complicit. You are taking money from them. I bet if we did an audit, we'd find you having a lot of money lining your pockets. How can you live with yourself? I just don't get it. I just cannot understand what's going on in your heads that you can go home and you can sit down at your tables and you can Google all this stuff about Scientology, which is well documented, that it's a child trafficking cult full of abuse and taking advantage of people and not giving them proper medical treatment. And how can you do that? I just don't know how you can do that. Bye.
Next, we have George Bazzetti. Okay. Go to Road and Victorov. Okay. Andrew Gravener.
Starting off with the Chiefs report, the Chiefs report should be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes at every meeting. If the Chiefs report exceeds 3 minutes, we should be able to match the amount of time the Chief takes. And regardless of how long the Chief takes to give his report, everyone should be able to speak both in person and on the phone. And you're doing something weird with the order of speakers now. Isn't it supposed to be like one person in person, one person on the phone? I don't know what order you're doing, and you just do it in whatever order you want at this point. So, again, we're not really getting a clear image on what the LAPD is doing as far as immigration and such. Now, there's a sanctuary city ordinance, and, the LAPD has been given they're just allowed to do whatever they want, but they're encouraged to follow the sanctuary city ordinance. You all should be making sure that the LAPD is not encouraged to follow the sanctuary city ordinance. They're required to follow the sanctuary city ordinance. So if the city council won't do it, then you should require them to follow the sanctuary city ordinance. And that should mean that the LAPD does not assist Trump immigration officials. And assisting Trump immigration officials does include traffic control, preventing families from knowing what's going on. It doesn't necessarily just mean, looking up the information and doing it themselves, although you may be doing some of that anyway. But you also should be not assisting them in any form, including traffic control and such. And I've certainly defined that as assisting them. And I don't know why McDonald doesn't think that's assisting them, because it certainly is. All right, so we got the consent agenda. So, on the consent agenda today, we're destroying a lot of records again. You won't even get these records to us when we ask for them. I've submitted multiple CPRA requests in the past. Most of the time, it takes a year and a half to get anything. And I've had them tell me that it would violate my privacy to send me a video of them violating my rights. That it would violate my privacy to send me a video of them violating my rights. That's an actual thing I've heard from the LAPD's CPRA unit before. um, so yeah, we've got more tools for the SWAT team to go into water. How often do they even go in water? It was like $12,000 for this. Never hear them going in water. What are we doing? So they can go arrest sharks or something here? We have $514 for one night in Palm Springs for the chief. $514 for one night in Palm Springs. What are you? Where?
William Good.
Good morning. So if I heard this correctly, Commissioner Sanchez Gordon, you were praising the chief for a critical incident video, something that is required by policy. Now, he does his little Hollywood edit to it, right? I would prefer he just release the body-worn video as is and treat us like adults and let us make up our minds, but he produces those videos because he thinks there are some idiots that will fall for it. You fit the bill. As for you, Vice President, you mentioned that you were troubled by the 403 civilian personnel that are being laid off. You know how many actual street cops are being laid off? How many cops are being laid off? 0. 403 civilian personnel are being laid off. Why? Because they are not represented by the LAPPL. That's why. But it's a scam because now, like he said, he's going to take uniform officers and have them do that job at time and a half as overtime. We're not saving any money off of it. They're making bank, the LAPPL. Now, like I said, LAPPL runs him, and they actually run the mayor too. The whole reason why this new budget is structured that way is because she took our money, $1 billion of our dollars, and paid the LAPPL for an endorsement, and that's a fact. And then she told this guy, because LAPPL wants it, that he needs to go easy on cops and improve morale. So he has these working groups right now that are made up of 10 people, 5 of them LAPPL directors, who are going into command staff and kicking out certain command staff. From my understanding, you can hear it from me first, we're in the process of having a vote of no confidence by command staff against Barney Rubble right here. I saw you yesterday at the budget meeting. I noticed that you were sitting next to Craig Lally, the president. He wasn't sitting next to you, you were sitting next to him. Because that is the order. He runs you. And like I've been told by many people, the LAPPL is in your office on a regular basis, overthrowing all types of complaints. All of them. Yeah, you could shake your head, but it's the truth. He runs your ass. The LAPPL runs your ass, just like they run the mayor. And I was talking about Ralph Campos last week, who is the LAPPL director. I was talking about his business. He's got another business, 911 Entertainment. His business partner over there, you guys gave a commendation to not so long ago, a SWAT officer when he was in Rampart Crash who kidnapped the kid and took him to a rival gang area, dropped him off, and he was killed. And then he hid it for 5 years. And now he works on the fucking SWAT team? You guys are disgusting.
Next, we have Birsham. Over Zoom.
Can you hear me?
Hi, yes.
Can you hear me?
What items would you like to speak on?
Oh,
Okay, 3 minutes.
I'm here to speak about something that has festered in the heart of Los Angeles for far too long, the unchecked criminal behavior of the cult of Scientology. Let's be clear. If any other organization in the city were accused of child abuse, elderly abuse, human trafficking, and forced labor, there would be raids, arrests, and investigations. But when it comes to Scientology, silence, inaction, protection. Why is that? There are credible, documented allegations from countless survivors, children forced to work long hours, denied education, and subjected to physical, psychological, and sexual abuse. Elderly members isolated and exploited. People trafficked, coerced, and trapped, all under the guise of religion. This is not freedom of religion. This is organized crime hiding behind tax exemption and celebrity status. And where is the LAPD in all of this? We've heard reports of cases ignored, victims dismissed, and conflicts of interest. It raises one disturbing question. Is LAPD protecting the public or protecting Scientology? Enough is enough. You are sworn to serve and protect. That means investigating every credible report of abuse, regardless of who the accused are or how much money and power they hold. That means transparency, not complicity. I'm demanding that this commission takes action to open independent investigations into every abuse claim tied to Scientology. Audit LAPD's past handling of these cases. Hold your officers accountable for any failures or misconduct. And most importantly, protect the victims, not the abusers. This city should not be a safe haven for criminals simply because they wear a religious mask. You owe the victims of Scientology more than silence. You owe them justice. Just to name a few: Lara Anderson, Rosemary Chipwalk, Serge Delmar, Balazs Bogani, Miriam Francis, Nora Ames, Liz Ferris, Taina Kamula, Natalie Webster, Jenna Miscavige, Amber Verness, Mike Brown, and hundreds of others. Thank you.
Next, we have Audit LA.
Good morning. I want all topics. Hope you can hear me. On Easter Sunday, April 20th, Scientology held a street closure on L. Ron Hubbard Way. The permit authorized closure for vehicles only, not pedestrians. But when I arrived, I was illegally stopped by armed Scientology guards and third-party guards. Every one of them was armed. All but two wore identifying patches. They blocked me from the public sidewalk and falsely claimed I couldn't pass. This wasn't a misunderstanding. I was targeted because I am a known advocate exposing Scientology's abuses, and this makes this viewpoint-based discrimination. That makes it prior restraint. And because it happened on a public sidewalk under a city-issued permit enforced by private guards acting under color of law, it was a direct violation of my First Amendment rights. I called LAPD. Officers responded. They read the permit. They confirmed I was right. And they did. Personally, they escorted me through the area and told them to stop. I want to commend those officers because they did their job. Unlike most in the past, they haven't. They upheld their oath, and they should be recognized for that. But the second that they left, they continued to do it. Okay, they continued to prevent other people. All right. All right, and this isn't an isolated incident. It happens at every event they hold, and LAPD knows it. Complaints have been submitted since May of last year, and nothing seems to change. This commission knows what's happening, and that includes Commissioner Errol Southers, who also serves as a state-level civil rights leader. You know what prior restraint is. You know what viewpoint suppression is, and you know that public sidewalks are protected forums. If an organization can use public permits to build a perimeter of armed guards and block critics and advocates from public land, then the Constitution has no meaning in this city. LAPD is responsible for enforcing permit terms. LAPD coordinates with Public Works. LAPD has jurisdiction over private security in public space. LAPD has a duty to refer unlicensed or unlawful guards to BSIS, and LAPD has the authority to stop this pattern of abuse. What happened to me wasn't just an inconvenience. It was a civil rights violation at the source. It was prior restraint, viewpoint suppression, and it was enforced by armed private security acting like law enforcement under LAPD's watch. If LAPD doesn't act, if you don't start recommending permit denials, investigating security violations, and protecting the public's right to exist in public space, you're not neutral, you're complicit. And I'm asking you to do something about it. I did file a complaint. But I also want to know you to know that we have a victim here of Scientology. You had a victim a couple weeks ago come. You have victims coming to tell you the hell they've been through. And that's why we advocate, okay? And that fact that Scientology could be told by LAPD to open up that sidewalk, they didn't have a right to do it. And as soon as LAPD left, they went right back to do what they want to do because they feel they are in charge. Make it stop.
Susan Rocha.
My name is Susan Rocha, and actually that same thing has happened to me before too, because I've been up there while they're having their fairs, and the security guards are very harassing. They follow you, they walk behind you, and it's very intimidating that you don't know what's going to happen. You're not free just to walk freely, and they have street closures all the time where they're not supposed to be having them, and they block off the streets when they're not supposed to, and that's not right. We have a right to be on the sidewalk, but yet their security guards will follow you around while you're walking down their street doing absolutely nothing. So I've been in that situation, and when they have their little fairs, people have the right to be on the street to look at their, whatever they're giving away, their little fair thing. People have a right to be there, but that's not the way they act. They follow you, they watch you, they talk to you, they tell you you can't be there. I've been there. That's happened to me. And I support First Amendment. The reason why I support First Amendment is because I protest Divine Savior Catholic Church and their noisy sound system. And Mr. McDonald, you still haven't talked to Priest Albert over at Divine Savior. I lived in my home before they installed their full bullhorns and their tape recordings that blasted my house all day long. This church does not give a damn about anybody else but their own self. They've prosecuted me in court 2 times. 2 times they've lost. Are you listening to Carlos? Your prosecutor, Gabriela Taylor, prosecuted me with no evidence. 3 witnesses, including the priest Albert Pragasam, who never saw anything, but they prosecuted anyways. Okay, I fought him. I went to jury trial and I fought his ass. I was found not guilty. 12 people believe me and not Priest Albert and his lying church. That's really disgusting. That's really sick for something that never happened, that they would try to put me in jail. Oh, but three men carried me out of the church that they never produced because it never happened, and a bunch of other lies. And I give kudos to my senior lead officer, Luis Reyes, over at Northeast, who's always supported me, who never talked bad about me, who did the right thing in court. You know what? LAPD was good to me. It's a stick of prosecutors that prosecute because they're in kudos with the Catholic Church. They don't give a damn if you're innocent. They'll prosecute just to shut you up. And that's what they tried to do to me. And I'm asking you to still talk to Divine Savior. Tell them to turn off their goddamn bullhorns. 10 times.
Ma'am, your time is up. Ma'am? This is your first warning, and you will be asked to leave. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Next on Zoom, we have Defend the LAPD.
Ma'am, your time is up. Please let the others speak.
All items, please.
Okay, ma'am, you're now going to be asked to leave the meeting. Ma'am, your time's up. Next speaker, please.
What items would you like to speak on?
All items, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Okay. Good morning. I'm here because LAPD is facing a department-wide leadership crisis and needs urgent correction. Eliminating 403 civilian positions is a critical mistake. Sworn officers pulled from patrol to fill these roles will reduce coverage, delay response times, and overload field resources. The pretext stop policy drafted under Liz Rhodes is vague. Officers aren't sure what's allowed, so they avoid traffic enforcement. compromising public safety. Rewrite it clearly with officer input. Morale is collapsing and it's not about pay. Officers are punished for doing their jobs. Cash overtime is gone and unpaid suspensions drag on, even when complaints are disproven by body-worn video. Officers lose income, destroy their credit, and in some cases are forced to sell their homes. Meanwhile, real safety violations, officers not wearing vests during use of force, fingers on triggers, not wearing seatbelts are dismissed with more training. Why is that the response for conduct that risks lives, while false accusations, already disproven, lead to financial destruction and ruined careers? Chief, enforce existing laws. Work with the city attorney to charge those who knowingly file false police reports. If they won't act, the league should file civil suits for defamation. False complaints will stop the moment liars face consequences. How many IA officers are wasted chasing these? Even members of your own command staff are discussing a vote of confidence. That's not just rank and file frustration, it's a leadership credibility crisis. It's been 6 months, the honeymoon is over, time to clean house. Department claims resource shortages, yet still assigns a commander and 5 officers to a full-time DEI unit. That's not a priority, it's a political window dressing. That commander should be reassigned to something meaningful, like rebuilding the Animal Cruelty Task Force dismantled under Chief Moore. Animal abuse cases are rising and rescue groups say LAPD often refuses to assist. Recently, I supported a case that DA Hockman filed charges on. Rusty the dog was beaten with a metal chain. I want to sincerely commend Central's Captain Raul Jovel, Lieutenant Sherry Stelter, and Lieutenant Andy Mathis for their outstanding leadership, persistence, and integrity throughout that case. Without their follow through, it likely wouldn't have moved forward. They embody what this department should strive for: officers who take abuse seriously, act decisively, and do what's right even when it's hard. I hope Rusty is safely located soon. Teresa, you sound completely woke and clueless when you ask the chief questions and talk about the department. You haven't even bothered to learn. Go spend a day with G&D as they take down rings of child sex traffickers so you can get some perspective on what's important to LAPD. Focus on the real issues like being down 1,500 officers rather than what ICE is doing, which isn't under LAPD's jurisdiction. Let cops do their jobs instead of demanding all these useless reports. Lastly, internal assignments must be earned. No one should land a desk job off probation just because they know someone. If you haven't done full 5 years on the street, you shouldn't be behind a desk. Leadership comes from experience, not connections. Thank you.
Next, we have Defender of Ants.
Good evening. Last time I was here, I filed a report with Inspector General. Within 2 hours, I was handcuffed in the back of an LAPD squad car, Northeast Division. Had me at gunpoint for over an hour. That's about the 11th time I've been at gunpoint. I got some new jewelry here. Thank you. 7 felonies you guys charged me with. The 16 misdemeanors out of Northeast Division wasn't enough. You went with 7 more felonies. Hate crime. Talking about child abuse in the Church of Scientology is not a fucking hate crime, you morons. It's not a hate crime. Saying the church is a cult of Scientology that we could help is not a hate crime. That's not a felony. Putting up a poster that there's missing children is not a hate crime. Not in any fucking world. Not in any world. I'm going to beat all these fucking charges. I'm going to beat every single one of them. Because Scientologists can't testify. Who's the DA working with? Kendrick Moxon. Unindicted co-conspirator. The largest takeover of the U.S. government. Kendrick Moxon. He lied. They stopped me on the sidewalk. Armed guards stopped me on that sidewalk. Guess what the judge said? The judge said I had a right to fucking be there. You have Audit LA, they're stopping. Armed guards are stopping people from accessing the thing. You could go there if you want to just join the fucking cult. But I'm going to tell you, what are they doing there? What is the actual fucking child abuse? It's auditing. Children, 10-year-old, 11-year-old, 12-year-old children. Jim, this is what they do in that church. Have you ever had your butthole licked, Jim? How often do you masturbate, Jim? That's what they're doing in that building. You want to talk about ICE? What the fuck is wrong with you? Children are asking grown men how often they masturbate. Teresa, figure it out. It's disgusting. I've been at gunpoint 10 times. Thank you for giving me back both of my fucking phones. You figured out I wasn't the fucking swatter. Was it because Homeland Security got involved with the crime? They took Gomez off from Northeast Division. You have Officer Rand from Hollywood Division saying that I'm selling narcotics and having guns to San Francisco. Hollywood didn't even take the police report. They never took the police report of the complaint on Officer Rand.
Laura Anderson.
Hi, my name is Laura Anderson. I have a little PTSD always talking about the subject of the cult of Scientology. I specifically have looked a few of your guys' names up. I've seen you, Rasha, you were, here I actually still have your thing up. Rasha, you were a former federal prosecutor with more than 20 years of first chair trial and appellate experience. The cult of Scientology, one of the things we did when I was about 8 years old, I was clapping extremely intensely with a bunch of other children in the cult to the leader saying the war is over. And that was because they had bullied, you can call it bullied, but they infiltrated the IRS and they used people like my Social Securities, members of the cult that had no idea their name and their information was being used to infiltrate the IRS, infiltrate by individually putting each person, myself, their name as a lawsuit. That took too much money, took too much time. The IRS couldn't fucking deal with Scientology doing this anymore. They made a deal. They gave the cult tax-free exempt status. That doesn't make them a religion. They're not a church. I was born and raised in this. I was the auditor as a 13-year-old ethics MAA, auditing public outside members that were Scientologists that are part of the LAP, part of Clearwater PD, part of the authority that allows people and Scientology to continue doing what they're doing. We're not allowed to report crimes to the outside. That is policy. If they do, we get in trouble. We go to jail. There's their own justice system in Scientology. It's hard for you guys to see that because they used the government structure to look like Scientology is just like you, but not. They used it so they could infiltrate. I did this. We did this as children, not knowing what the fucking outside world was. We didn't know that we had people we could go to, okay? We were molested, we were raped, we were used fucking every day, 15, 14, 15-hour days, slaving away our whole childhood. We signed billion-year contracts. We children were shredding documents from the Lisa McPherson case. Kendrick Moxon is putting all the protesters against Scientology in jail right now because they choose to protect people like me. I'm a rock star, I have a voice now, so if it's shaky, I'm sorry, but this is PTSD. We need your help. Break your ties financially with Scientology. Break them. Stop receiving any more checks.
Thank you, ma'am.
Stop receiving checks from the city.
Ma'am, your time is up. Thank you.
Do you hear me?
Ma'am, your time is up.
Do you hear me?
Next speaker, please. Sir, sir, and ma'am, your times are up. Next speaker.
Megan.
Operation Snow White. Do the research. It's a 10-minute fucking research.
So the chief loves to gossip about crime committed by community members, but his report never includes the rapes, murders, assault, and robberies regularly committed by LAPD officers. It's in the newspapers every week. You want to talk about the horror of trees cut down in the downtown area, but what about the trees removed from South Central so your helicopters can more efficiently police the black and brown people who live there? Teresa, your comment about the critical incident videos was fucking wild. They aren't a bird's eye view of what happened, Teresa. It's their required Sundance short film submission about what they want the narrative of events to be. Have you seen one before? Have you seen more than one? That comment was really embarrassing for you. Also, the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition wrote you a 10-page letter about the myriad ways that LAPD is openly and deeply collaborating with ICE. An entire 10-page letter cited with facts about why exactly the label of LA as a sanctuary city is bullshit. So let's get caught up here, okay? Yeah, I've watched 4 horrific deaths in the past couple months. Murders by the LAPD, which either occurred recently or are on the agenda because you're deciding whether those murders are justified or not, in policy or not. Linda Becerra Moran, Yang Yang, Mario Sanchez, Wilver Blanco. And what becomes clear when you watch those videos is that your policy is execution, not de-escalation. All 4 of those people were executed. It's very clear when you watch the video that it was completely unnecessary that they were shot and killed. Linda Becerra Moran was shot in the chest holding a knife to her own throat. And in the end, it was just quicker to kill her. Yang Yang, he was murdered within 10 seconds of LAPD opening the door, a door they could have closed again at any point. And actually a report from McDonald addressed just that fact, why they didn't just close the door again, and they said that they couldn't because Yang was trespassing. More important to murder him than let him get away with trespassing. He was shot by Andres Lopez, who said he feared for his life because Yang had an angry expression on his face. Just wondering if you're fearing for your life right now from the angry expression on my face. The body cam footage of Mario's, I don't even have time. There's never enough time. You cancel so many fucking meetings, we don't have time to talk about it all.
Hamid Khan. Hamid Khan.
So picking up on Megan's comment about the detailed letter that highlights and identifies and exposes the many systemic ways that information sharing is happening. Information gathering is happening, information storing is happening, information sharing is happening. That is directly fed to the Homeland Security Department, to ICE, to the FBI, and various other agencies. We have clearly delineated that how, and I'll just read a couple points over there, that how LAPD acts as an information gatherer and tracker for immigration agencies. We have clearly delineated how LAPD shares real-time data with federal agencies through fusion centers. We have clearly delineated that how our LAPD arbitrarily labels immigrants as gang-affiliated, which then becomes a basis for federal authorities to detain, banish, and torture them. We have highlighted how LAPD reports on individuals through suspicious activity reporting program, which is a direct through line to the fusion centers and the federal government. And then the DHS Homeland Security Information Network, the HSIN mobile app reporting system. LAPD participates with federal agencies in a wide range of multi-agency task forces sharing information and resources. LAPD acts as an alert for DHS and ICE by sending fingerprints for every person that is booked into the system. So now, and as we go along, we are uncovering, since we sent the letter, more information and finding out your LAPD connections in 2025 through the record management system, and we'll create a whole detail piece for that result. That how LAPD connects to CopLink, one-way outbound, how LAPD connects to the California law enforcement telecommunication system, Two-way, how LAPD connects to the National Crime Information Center. Two-way, how LAPD connects to CopLogic. One-way inbound, how LAPD connects to LifeScan, how LAPD connects to evidence.com. Two-way information sharing, on and on and on and on and on. So now we have exposed it, we have delineated it, we have mapped it out, we have highlighted it, we have spoken about it. And thank you, Megan, for lifting and exposing the myth of Sanctuary City. Because it took what you should be doing, which we don't expect you to do, is exactly that's why fuck reform. You cannot reform this system because what we get is the language of transparency. What we get is the language of reporting. What we get is the language of accountability. What we get is the language of auditing. And then that's where it is. So we have to continue to expose it. We have to bring it to the communities. Because the communities have to know the facts so they can defend themselves.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Matios Kidan.
Okay, yeah, a couple things on the agenda this week. You have a pilot program to give officers 72 hours to get their story straight after a use of force incident. This is silly, obviously. I mean, for the record, even without this pilot program, there's no such thing as discipline, accountability, or justice when police violence comes about, nor do we expect there to be. But I think kind of in the context of, the myriad of racial bias complaints this department gets that are never sustained, in the context of two city council members, Hugo Soto Martinez and Tim McCosker, who was a former LAPPL lobbyist, along with the mayor, explicitly recognizing that, there is no way to hold police, to discipline police officers, and even introducing motions to identify ways to discipline police officers. It just seems especially silly to give officers another layer of protection. It's just so obvious what the intention here is, but it's what we expect. I mean, you're really kind of creating more and more carve-outs or more and more avenues by which LAPD can get away with violence. And, it's a really disgusting kind of cycle, because then we see families like those of Young Yang who came here in the last couple weeks pleading for some sort of justice. We see the Washington Post report that a third of all LAPD shootings in the span of a few years have involved people experiencing mental health crises. And then you vote to absolve the LAPD of these crimes. So really, what is this layer of protection? It's kind of a joke, but it just kind of shows the intention here. Another thing to kind of laugh at on this agenda is this whole motion around records retention, right? Introducing records for destruction. This is a secret police department. It has been for decades. They've written, LA Times has written, a lot of publications have written about how even in the 70s, in response to complaints against LAPD officers, in response to criminal court cases against LAPD officers, the LAPD shredded tons of documents. They shredded 4 tons of documents to get these cases thrown out. And, even beyond destroying records, we see how, the LAPD withholds records and then sues organizations like Stop LAPD Spying for publishing public records. This is a secret police force. This procedure around kind of records retention is a joke. And then lastly, this dinners with young folks that you guys are doing, this whole notion of trust as being a lack of trust within the community as being a failing of the community is a joke. Discussing the violence that we experience as a failing of the community is a joke. And one last thing I want to bring up is, I'm sure you all seem a liberal a lot, but I'm sure you're kind of condemning Trump and these unconstitutional ICE deportations in closed circles. But, when he met with President Bukele of El Salvador, the thing Trump said is homegrowns are next. I want to uplift that Errol Southers' framework is called homegrown violent extremism.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
I feel like just 2 weeks ago, Teresa, I was like, wow, this is so embarrassing for you. You clearly didn't listen to Jim. And then maybe Jim didn't listen to Jim this week. Because last week, Jim said that ICE sometimes gets support from the LAPD. And then this week, you said they don't. So Matios actually is the one who kind of helped me to understand this. But a sanctuary city is a binary. It's not sometimes we collaborate with ICE, or sometimes LAPD shares information, or sometimes LAPD personnel is present for traffic support. Sanctuary is either we do or we do not. And section 19191 and 19192 say that LAPD and city resources should not. But very clearly, both materially and in your own documents later on, you do collaborate with ICE. So Jim, at least have your language be clear to reflect the reality of what you're doing. Also, let's talk about your counterinsurgency dinner with pigs as well. You released a super long report, which functionally is the same theater that we've seen time and again, in which the police are racist and violent, and then they're shocked and upset that the people perceive them to be racist and violent. The report talks about community policing and deputization of the community in order to justify and sanitize LAPD's violence yet again. LAPD's own findings includes quotes, which some I'll read later, from community members detailing the individual or specific instances they had with police officers in which the officers were shitty. The report notes that these experiences are concentrated in communities of color, working class communities, communities with folks who are experiencing mental illness. This report highlights individuals' experiences intentionally to obscure the fact that the entirety of policing is predicated on violence. The quotes from community members are simply a symptom of a system designed to oppress surplus populations. And LAPD calls these instances of extreme violence, quote, hurdles to improvement, rather than calling what police violence is what it is. Premeditated murder, incarceration, and control of Black and brown communities. How is killing Yang Yang or killing Linda Becerra Moran a hurdle to improvement? That's murdering someone. The proposed solution to your virulent and ingrained racism and violence is instead to host a community policing counterinsurgency program like sports teams or even toy drives, which you quote. This does nothing to eradicate the extent and power of LAPD's harm. Instead, counterinsurgency programs designed to, quote, improve relationships, we know that they're nothing more than a weak and watery attempt to obscure LAPD's violence. In fact, there's a whole section on police response to mental health crises. A community member writes in your report that there are, quote, there are so many stories where the person with mental illness has no weapon and is still killed by law enforcement. It still ends in tragedy, unquote. We heard from Yang Yang's family members a few weeks ago, a story that ended in tragedy. We know that Linda Becerra Moran's story ended in tragedy because she too was experiencing a crisis and you shot her. A police officer, quote, states, and this person has a gun or a knife and you just go up there with your little clipboard and your paper. What the hell are you going to do? My answer is clear. Even that quote illuminates how police officers have no other skills than to shoot to kill. They can't.
Ma'am, your time is up. Next speaker.
Grace.
Next speaker.
Grace.
Next speaker, ma'am.
This so-called pilot program for delayed interviews is not about transparency or thoroughness. It's about giving violent cops 72 hours to get their story straight. Watch the footage, talk to their supervisors, and rehearse a lie. LAPD's own language says this clearly. The point is to, quote, develop a comprehensive interview strategy and, quote, not to tell the truth. Not to seek accountability, which we know could never occur within the system. Just to craft a cleaner narrative. You're making it even easier for LAPD to bury the evidence of its violence under layers of bureaucratic performance. This is not new. It's just a continuation of the LAPD's standard playbook. Delay, distort, and deny. And the board plays a central role in that playbook. You claim to oversee this department, but what you really do is manufacture legitimacy for its violence. You found the killing of 14-year-old Valentina Peralta in policy when she was shot and killed while trying on holiday dresses in a Burlington fitting room by a ricocheted bullet. You found the execution of 26-year-old Alex Flores in policy, even though he had already been shot when officers fired again. You found the murder of Charlie Africa in policy after officers swarmed him in his tent and fired 6 times. And just this month, Fabian Garcia and 2 other commissioners voted to find the killing of Yang Yang in policy too, which is especially disgusting after you performed sympathy for his parents who had to grieve another one of his birthdays with him gone. There is no clear evidence of what this board exists to do. Convert death into paperwork, murder into protocol, and racist violence into policy. This pilot program is just more of the same. It's a bureaucratic weapon designed to protect the LAPD story, not to expose it. Because this board has never existed to tell the truth. It exists to secure the coherence of policing as a legitimate institution. You do not review violence, you codify it. You approve the rules that justify it. You twist procedure into a shield for the state. And this pilot, like every other procedural innovation you seamlessly pass through, is about making sure that even when people are killed, the only ones who are ever found out of policy are the dead. How shameful.
Teresa Masone.
Good morning. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Teresa Masonette, and I am co-founder of the South LA Tree Coalition. We're a nonprofit with a mission to grow, preserve, and protect the tree canopy, mainly in South LA, but throughout Los Angeles. Many residents are outraged with the tree destruction that took place downtown over the weekend. This wasn't just typical vandalism of city property. And yes, trees in the public right-of-way are city property. Trees have an intrinsic value that we can all appreciate. They clean the air, they provide shade, they are home to birds and insects. But as city infrastructure, trees also have a literal dollar value, which cannot be mitigated just by planting another tree. We would like the LAPD to meet with the Urban Forestry Division and the Office of Forest Management to get a better understanding on how the LAPD can support enforcement efforts, especially on the weekends when UFD inspectors are not staffed. Thank you.
Thank you. And I know we've exceeded our time, and I think we've taken everyone in the room. Let's take one more Zoom before we conclude.
Bob Minton.
Yes, hi, good morning. I want to speak on a couple of things. First, I'll start off with the MEU program. Back in July 2015, your own officer, Ted Simola, said, quote, "The MEU program is going to put us all out of work in a good way." Now, why would he say that? It's because, by and large, the MEU program has, in fact, successfully resolved issues, whereas people were in mental crisis, made it out alive because they had competent psychiatrists, not gun trigger happy LAPD officers ready to kill somebody in a 5150 mental health crisis. Since the inception of the program, the MEU program has actually dwindled down to about now, public records say roughly 16 to 17. I witnessed personally in October 2024, CD13 Hugo Soto Martinez deliberately choose to defund the MEU program by cutting out approximately $250,000 and instead allocating it to just overtime, just regular overtime, totally unannounced as to what exact the work of the overtime would be, but just LAPD overtime. Cut it out from the DMH, cut it out from the MEU program, and allocate it just straight to overtime. And that's because, of course, the LAPD is run by the PPO. You guys are union simps. What they say goes, they own the city. But that's not the worst of it. Back in May 7th, 2024, a black man wielding a machete with his genitals out was actively harassing a minor on Fountain Avenue at the Scientology location. Officers were called, a video was shown to the responding officers who were from Northeast, and they literally said, and I even have from an inside source, the recording of why the city attorney as well as the LAPD decided not to arrest the man despite committing indecent exposure and sexually harassing a minor. They said, well, it's because he had his junk out and was jacking off next to a tree while actively threatening to kill them with the machete, therefore it didn't count. So I asked this board, if any of you were to have any of your significant others or children actively sexually harassed by a Scientology agent with their junk out and threatening to be killed by a machete, if they do it next to a tree, would that be all right by you, that they don't get prosecuted? If they get sexually harassed, as long as Scientology does it, and as long as they're next to a tree, is that all right by you? That guy's property was seen behind a Scientology-owned property in a private gate. The only way they could have gotten there is if they were escorted to that area. Only if they were escorted personally by a Scientology security guard to that area. There's undeniable proof that guy was a Scientology agent. He sexually harassed a minor repeatedly. It's not the only time.
Okay, that concludes the public comment on the agenda. Moving on to item number 3 on the agenda. I'm going to pull items 3A and 3B. Do any of the other commissioners have questions for 3C through 3E?
No, thank you.
Commissioner Shields, I'm going to kick myself off, but Laura came as a victim, and it was hard.
Ma'am,
I'm here.
ma'am,
I don't care. I'll get kicked out.
you
It's
can
okay.
leave.
I
Ma'am.
will leave. You couldn't have been more heartless and cold to victims that needed help. And it's a shame that, see, and this is what people have been talking about. The inhumanity and the coldness.
Ma'am,
She is
you
a victim
had an
and
opportunity to speak.
PTSD. I don't care. That was so wrong of you. You owe her an apology, and you need to do better.
Ma'am.
You were a prosecutor for 20 years. She said I had PTSD, and I'm having an incident right now because this is hard
Ma'am,
for me.
you've been warned. Please leave the room.
Now, that's fine. I don't care. That was disgusting display of that was disgusting. I am going to leave. Do better. That was disgusting.
Okay, do any, Commissioner Sanchez-Gordon, do you have any questions on items 3C through 3G? Okay, then I would move that we approve items 3C through 3G and take the recommended board action. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Commissioner Sanchez-Gordon, did you go? Okay, thank you. So those have been adopted and approved. Moving to item 3A, I understand that there is an amendment to that report. Mr. Sibley or Mr. Baugh?
Thank you, Commissioner. Yeah, there's one amendment to the report on page 2 of the correspondence to the board from me. There's a list of service areas. One of those service areas that's listed is service area 15, and that was included in error and should be removed from the report.
Okay, and that's the only amendment?
That's correct, Commissioner, yes.
Okay, do any commissioners have any questions about this item?
No.
Okay, with that amendment, I move that we approve the report and adopt the recommendations for this report. Is there a second? Second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, report approved. Thank you. Item 3B. Do we have anyone for item 3B? Thank you. Thank you. Do you want to introduce yourselves real quickly?
Good morning, Commander Steve Ember, Commanding Officer, Support Services Group.
Hi, good morning. Police Administrator Elena Asukan, Commanding Officer of Records and Identification Division.
Wonderful, thank you. And so this is a report relating to the destruction of certain documents, and I want to confirm. Well, one, I had a question first. In the chart, there are references to TO+2, TO+5. Can you just describe what that means?
Yeah, actually, this, what's being proposed to you is adding some items to the record retention schedule for Evidence and Property Management Division. So there's no destruction on this document. It's just updating their record retention schedule to add a few items that were not there. But the TO+2 is time in office plus 2 years. And so the City of Los Angeles has a schedule that we all follow, and this follows the City of Los Angeles's policy on record retention.
Okay, so at this time, for this one, this is not going to result in any records being destroyed. These are categories of documents that will be added to the retention schedule. Is that
Correct, for Evidence and Property Management
Okay,
Division.
wonderful. Thank you. I'm glad I asked a question. Makes it a little bit more clear. Do any commissioners have any questions?
No.
No, I think that was clarified.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that, then I would move that we approve the report and adopt its recommendations. Is there a second? Second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So now we will move on to item 4 on the agenda, regular agenda items, starting with 4A, the verbal presentation by the Human Rights Commission. Do we have the commission president here?
Yes, you do. Hello.
Wonderful to see you again. Why don't you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, absolutely. My name is Brittany McKinley. I'm president of the Human Relations Commission for the city, and I am so excited to be here to present this report to you. I think that this report is going to truly make such a positive and long-lasting changing impact on policing and the community, the relationship between the community and the officers that serve and protect them. So thank you so much for taking the time to hear about this report. Thank you, LAPD, for your partnership. HRC has a long-standing history with the Los Angeles Police Department, and we look forward to continuing in this partnership and this work with you all, particularly when it comes to community policing and these dialogues. So I can take you through the report. I'm going to focus really on the meat of it, the findings and the recommendations. So these are some of the participants and sponsorships of the report, but this is all in the final report. So you'll be able to see those, a little bit about the Human Relations Commission and the significant projects that we have done. And then really just getting into the nuts and bolts of these dinner dialogues. So this was 26 dinner dialogues of young adults in each bureau, as well as off-duty police officers. And, you know, given this day and age and what's happened in the previous years, we didn't know what would come of sitting down young community members and off-duty police officers. But what I found in even participating in these dialogues and observing these dialogues is that oftentimes, because officers were showing up in plain clothes, in their off-duty cars, you really couldn't tell the difference between who was a community member and who was an officer. Some of them were hanging out afterwards. Some of them even went in so far as to exchange contact information after the dialogue so that they can go play basketball together or go participate in other activities together. So it was really quite beautiful. And overall, we had 135 community members participate in this. 139 officers participated in this. And then we went over 70 plus hours of recorded conversations of these facilitated dialogues. So everything you're about to hear in terms of the findings, in terms of the recommendations, these all came out of the voices of your off-duty patrol officers as well as the community members. So this is truly, I think what makes this report so valuable is that you really are getting firsthand what the community's thoughts and opinions were, as well as what off-duty patrol officers' thoughts were. Now, entry and exit surveys showed that community members left the dialogues with a more favorable view of officers than when they entered. And broadly, the report, we examined, that's a little bit of our methodology here that we can get into a little bit later. But I want to really talk about the meat and report, which is the findings and the analysis. And we focus mainly on police community interactions, so through early impressions, traffic stops, officer identity was also a theme that came up. Also identifying hurdles to improvement and identifying participants' ideas for improvement of trust. And so when we talk about early impressions, really the question that we asked was, you know, what is your first impression? This was asked to all our participants of police officers. And we did find that for people who had, it was a very mixed bag. For people who had positive impressions of police officers, a lot of this positive impression came through encounters with police officers at their school who were just nice and said hello in the hallway, and then also police officers that they were able to engage with because their community had a lot of community engagement programs with officers. Those who had negative impressions of police officers, those were often people who were in low-income neighborhoods, which was not surprising. Disparity in policing was a huge topic throughout these conversations. And those with immigrant backgrounds or family members who were immigrants or those who were struggling with substance abuse or had parents struggling with substance abuse that were worried that seeing an officer meant that either they were going to be taken away or their family members would be taken away. But what is interesting about that is that negative impressions change mostly through community engagement programs. People who initially had early impressions of officers, they changed over time just by having one great encounter with an officer at a community event. So just to show the importance of dialogues and events like these. So getting into more of the key takeaways here, we focus a lot on traffic stops, as traffic stops are one of the most fraught areas of interaction for both community members and officers. And studies show that this is actually where most engagement between officers and community members take place. One thing that we saw, and we saw this throughout the report, is that there was a lot of mutuality and overlap in the themes that came up throughout these prompts. And especially with traffic stops, we found that officers were just as fearful of the unpredictability of a traffic stop as community members were. We found that officers were focused on officer safety, whereas community members were focused on community safety. A big theme that popped up with community members in terms of traffic stops was a recognition that they understand that officers are facing a great deal of danger, or can be facing a great deal of danger when it comes to a traffic stop, but that as community members, they are not trained in traffic stops. They don't necessarily know how to, even though they try, they don't necessarily know how to ease an officer's concern, and oftentimes make missteps in trying to alleviate what they might believe that the fear that an officer may be facing. And one of the concerns that was brought up by a community member in response to an officer who stated that they wish community members could better understand, the unpredictability and fear they face during traffic stops. A community member stated that they wish the officer would recognize that they are actually trained in this field, trained to face danger, and community members are not. And so officer safety should not be the only thing that officers are concerned about during a traffic stop, but always remembering that as community members, this is also unpredictable and new for them as well. But I think one of the highlights of the traffic stop conversation that was an ongoing theme throughout the report is the fact that there was this just mutuality in the sense that everyone wants to be given the benefit of the doubt, everyone wants to be understood, and just this general theme of empathy towards one another and how can we improve that situation. And and we do have recommendations surrounding traffic stops in the recommendations, which I'll get to. The next thing we focused on, the next focus, that kind of key takeaway that came up here was community members perceived a difference in the type of policing offered to different areas. Officers mainly felt that difference was not racially motivated, but was based on crime stats. Community members often disagreed with that. Community members, this would typically delve into a conversation more so around different kinds of policing in affluent areas, how community members perceive that for a white suspect or a white community member being approached by an officer, that there's an inherent belief that there's kind of no wrongdoing, whereas for Black and Latinx community members, there seems to be just this approach that treats them automatically like a suspect. This conversation was probably the most contentious of all the conversations. But even with the contention, community members and officers were still able to sit down and have this hard conversation. And I think a lot of the pushback from community members was, hey, there's a recognized pattern here in policing. There's a long history in policing. And though we understand that, LAPD has as many of the off-duty officers pointed out, that the LAPD has one of the better track records in community policing for the community was an acknowledgement of more so the history and the pattern that has taken place, and recognizing that, just claiming that there are a higher statistic of crime in low-income neighborhoods does not, for community members, negate the fact that if they're of color, they feel that they are approached and treated differently. These last takeaways really kind of came out of what we kind of are calling the second report within the report. By having off-duty patrol officers at the table, we were able to actually gain a lot of insight into the challenges that these officers are facing in the field, particularly around the morale of officers. So officers reported a lot of difficulty in being able to engage with community positively because of low recruitment and retention, that they are constantly just going from call to call, stop to stop, and that makes it incredibly difficult to engage with the community in a meaningful way. So officers reported low morale due to overwork from low recruitment and retention, as I've stated, as well as being called to situations that they were not equipped for, such as mental health calls, negative portrayals of police in the media and social media. And again, a lot of these officers had positive feelings about community policing, but stated that they did not have the time or resources to truly build relationships in the communities that they policed. When it comes to negative portrayals of police in the media and social media, as well as being called into situations that we're not equipped for, we did find that community members did have an understanding and lots of empathy towards this, that there was a mutuality, especially when it came to portrayal of not just police in media, but of community in media. So there was an understanding, a mutuality there, and an overlapping of concern on the way that media portrays community members and the way that media portrays its officers. And then also community members were very understanding of the fact that officers are often called in on situations that they are just simply not equipped or trained for, and the need for alternative response models in those situations. Another key takeaway from this was really big discussions about how historical and personal trauma involving police still very much affects our community members. George Floyd was brought up, which I think was another contentious point within the dialogues. Officers saying, we shouldn't be lumped in with other police departments. We probably would have handled that differently had it taken place in Los Angeles. But other officers understanding that there is this deep history of trauma and wrong, and understanding why a situation like George Floyd could have community members on edge. There was also a lot of discussion around how officers were overworked during the protest and feel supported during the protest. And so I think there was a lot of shared, rather than a lot of people were able to voice their opinions in a way that sought to understand and educate more as a learning opportunity. And even though these conversations were difficult, especially ones centered around historical and personal trauma, ultimately they were able to have calm and civil conversations about these issues. So some community members noted that treatment has gotten better through the years, but others disagreed. But what we did find is that both officers and community members agreed that this past trauma throughout LAPD history of policing needs to be acknowledged and addressed. And we do have recommendations surrounding that in training, as a lot that came up on behalf of for many of the officers was this understanding like, well, I'm not racist. I didn't do that with the badge. I don't abuse the badge. And so having a sort of more of an education, which we'll talk about in the recommendations, but as part of training and education, more of a discussion with these officers about the history and personal trauma involving policing, so that maybe they can see that that it has less to do with them personally and more so to do with the history, could really go far increasing morale, as a lot of officers seem to be very personally upset with the way that community was kind of lumping them in with bad apples, so to speak. And ultimately, community members want officers they can trust, and officers want to be trusted. Another key takeaway here is that constructive conversation, and I think this is probably one of the most key takeaways here, is that constructive conversation is possible, and it does play an essential role in the building of trust. The fact that we were able to have patrol officers and community members sit down and talk about bias in policing, talk about the fears and concerns that they each face in traffic stops, talk about negative experiences with police, positive experiences with police, ask each other questions about, how it feels to be in certain situations. And then even if the conversation was a little heated, the fact that they were able to still sit there and break bread and then acknowledge each other afterwards is huge, right? These are groups of people that people just assume cannot sit together and have a civilized conversation. But when we intentionally work together to create spaces that allow people to come in to seek to understand, that's when we can really build progressive change. So community members in our exit survey actually showed that majority of community members left with an improved view of officers. Many of them said that they would do this again. We had a lot of officers saying that every officer should be required to do this, and that this is something that that they wish that they could do more of. So into the recommendations, and these recommendations were drafted by the HRC, drafted by the commission, but they really did come from the 70 plus hours of dialogue that we listened to and the themes that we felt were truly kind of coming forth consistently throughout this report. A big area of concern was officer morale, just the amount of officers that spoke up saying that this was an issue. And we know that when officers feel supported, they're better able to do their jobs, which is better for a community. So one of the recommendations, one of the themes that we found, which is where this first bullet point is coming from, establishing a bridge or program of feedback between quote unquote top brass and rank and file. This is really coming from a lot of officers who just felt that top brass was kind of out of touch with what they were experiencing day to day in the field. And they didn't really feel that there was a way or a method for them to be able to communicate their concerns or their needs to their higher ups. So establishing a bridge or a program of feedback between top brass and rank and file, I think, can go a long way in curing that issue. Also offering department-wide resilience training to all personnel to combat the effects of primary and secondary trauma. We did have a lot of officers talking about how they can go from one incredibly horrific, traumatizing, life-changing call to a routine traffic stop where they're just, trying to hand out maybe like a red light ticket, and how difficult that is, and how hard it is right now, how hard it is for them to get access to the kind of mental health services that they need. So going into our next point, an increase in access to mental health services for officers, also acknowledging the history of policing in Los Angeles and the way it impacted the community. Again, I think this would go a long way in officer morale if there was more focus on that in training and education, so that they understand that this is about, that this isn't so much about them, but about the history, and they're kind of having to, when they get out there, battle this perceived, the consequences of that history, and that's something that they're walking into and not necessarily something personally against them. And secondly, in terms of training and education, ensuring training is consistent from the academy to the field and from neighborhood to neighborhood. You'll see in the report there were a few quotes where officers mentioned that they felt incredibly well trained during the academy, but then one officer said, and I quote, "All the training goes out the window when you hit the field," and so making sure that and perhaps that's something that can be discussed in that program of feedback. What officers mean by that, and how we can make sure that training is consistent from the academy to the field. Also providing trauma-informed training, particularly in de-escalation. We had a couple of officers speaking up about how they give respect when they're given respect, but when we're dealing with communities or community members who are incredibly traumatized from past experiences with officers, it can't be presumed that you're just going to automatically get that respect from a community member. And so providing trauma-informed training, particularly in de-escalations, officers should be trained on how to respond in the face of fear, rudeness, disrespect, et cetera, which can be symptoms of historical or personal trauma. And then providing training for cultural competency and effective communication to all personnel. In terms of improving community engagement, continuing as LAPD has done so well, continuing to decrease pretextual stops and continuing to publicize the disaggregated stop data. We all know that transparency is incredibly important when rebuilding community trust. And then deprioritizing enforcement actions of non-criminal offenses, particularly in low-income neighborhoods, due to the and in order to decrease stress on both officers and community members. Continuing to invest funding and resources to support community-based organizations and projects promoting community safety, which would hopefully take the weight off of officers, and developing a community engagement plan that hopefully includes a lot more of these dialogues, because I'm sure you can see the benefit from them. Supporting alternative response models. So continuing to develop, especially since we see so much contention in traffic stops, continuing to develop a separate traffic division with unique vehicles and uniforms to address moving violations, enhancing mental health crisis response teams by expanding service 24/7, exploring alternative enforcement actions for nonviolent crimes, and considering creating a holistic approach with a social work mental health lens, developing a strategic response plan with community safety partners to improve coordination and deployment of alternative crisis response teams, and continue to implement LAPD's long-standing policy of a hands-off approach to immigration enforcement, especially now. And so these are some of the exit surveys that we did at the end of our dialogue. If you entered the room with a negative opinion of police officers, did this conversation improve your opinion of police officers? As you can see, majority of participants agreed that their negative opinion was improved after these conversations. How likely are you to participate in another conversation like this? Highly likely was majority of the response. And then just in terms of final words, we have a police officer and community member speaking about the benefits of this dialogue. And you can see from this police officer in Valley Bureau, I think we changed relationship by working on generational trauma on both sides, police side and community sides. We as officers need to work on not stereotyping. We can start by understanding, by giving the next person a chance. And this community member speaking to, a lot of people don't like cops because it really reminds them, it's a genuine reminder, a valid reminder of what happened in the past, maybe to a family member, maybe to groups of people. So I think that's why spaces like these are important, because hearing you and not seeing you in your uniform humanizes the whole experience. And that's one of my favorite quotes, I think, from the report, just really highlighting the fact that at the end of the day, we are all living in this community together. We all want to see our community improve and be safer. And when we're able to hold dialogues and spaces like these where officers have a chance to show up as community members and speak to other community members, there's just so much room to gain such important connection, empathy, and understanding with one another. And so we hope, as with our previous iteration of the report, that you all adopt and implement these recommendations, as we think they would go a long way, not only in helping and supporting your officers, but in helping, supporting, and uplifting community as well. And I thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, President McKinley, for the report and also the presentation. We'll turn to my fellow commissioners first for questions. Commissioner Garcia? Questions or comments?
Yeah, thank you for the report. Appreciate it. Not just the report, but the hard work to continue these dinner dialogues and using them to really put together a good set of recommendations and acknowledgements. This isn't really a question, I guess, but it's more of just some thoughts and based on reading the reports, like how do we reduce tension when involved in a traffic stop? I think that's a big one, right? And so I'm curious what strategies officers are already doing that have had more often good interactions with traffic stops. Also curious what our mental health department would suggest or opinionate here in terms of what would make a good traffic stop. And connected to that would be sort of this switching from a bad incident or a stressful incident to then hopefully engaging in an opportunity incident, right? Like how do you switch from that to ensuring that the bad incident isn't impacting the next incident? And again, same thing, what are officers doing who have been successful at being able to switch that way, and what protective factors or strategies they're taking to ensure that they're doing that more often than not. And just like the previous one, what would our mental health department suggest in terms of an actual practice, not just, hey, do this, but what is there a 15-second mindfulness activity? Is there a X something that officers can do to again more successfully be able to transition from one incident to the next incident, and again with that idea of those opportunity incidents to improve and correct the relationship. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think those are both really great questions. I think that, I think that's one of the reasons why, and I'm not sure how much city council, like in this recommendation, are working with, sorry, I can't remember the name of the division right now that they're working with to do the separate traffic division. I'm sure that they probably explored those questions when going through with that recommendation, so I'd be interested to see what the data is there. But I do think just having a separate traffic division would really go far in alleviating a lot of that tension, just by virtue of the fact that it's separate from these other kind of calls that officers have to make. So hopefully by having having a completely separate division where officers are only addressing traffic stops, they are less likely to bring in the rest of the traumatic calls that they might have experienced previously with them to those traffic stops.
Commissioner Sanchez-Gordon?
Yes, thank you. First of all, I want to thank you for this very, very complete report. I'm definitely downloading it and keeping it with me and putting it in my important file of papers.
Thank you.
66 page. I think you've done an amazing job. I have just a couple of questions because I think it's so thorough that my first question is, who are your community members? Are they just normal people from the community, residents of the city of LA? Who are community members when you identify that group?
Yes, absolutely. So we went bureau by bureau, and we invited members from that area. A lot of them were students. We tried to stick to young adults between the ages of 18 and 25.
Okay, so primarily students, young people.
Yes, this was primarily young people.
All right. My next question is the follow-up. This is great, 66 pages of tremendous work and recommendations and study. But what is next? What is the follow-up?
Yes, absolutely. So the follow-up would hopefully be that all of these recommendations are adopted and implemented. Also that we can have continued dialogues where necessary to continue to improve and rebuild trust. And HRC is happy to partner with LAPD on that. We are also planning on having a young adult dinner dialogue symposium where we discuss the reports, hopefully with community members who participated so that they can see what came of this and the recommendations that came of it as well. And hopefully we're able to tell them that these are recommendations that will be adopted and implemented.
Okay. Do you have a time frame? Like a follow-up in a year, 6 months?
We're hoping to have the YAD symposium this year.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yes. Thank you.
And thank you. And we will, review your recommendations. And I think that, with some, there are, and really appreciate one, I think just having dialogues is just an amazing thing in and of itself, just because I think the more people are able to humanize the others is the way you make progress, right? And so I think it's so important, and I thought it was interesting to see when officers say that they thought everyone should do this. And so is there anything on the horizon or budget permitting that would allow future dialogues to happen, or is this kind of at this stage, the dialogues portion has been fully completed?
I think that there's still, I think we do, if I'm right, don't quote me, I'm pretty sure we do have leftover funds. So I think that there is still definitely space for more dialogues.
I think that's important. I think I would definitely recommend more dialogues. And one thing that I always struggle with, community engagement plans and community engagement with the department is how do you avoid just preaching to the choir, right? So you find people who already are supportive of the department, so they are willing to come to events, but how do you reach those that are also have less favorable views that can actually start really building those bridges? And so have you also had the similar struggle in terms of getting people involved and reaching out to people who are not as closely involved with the department?
Yes, I think that was the unique part about this report is that a lot of the community members that showed up were not community members that were supportive. And I think they took some convincing to show up and reaching out to some organizations asking to, basically inform or tell their young people. There was some hesitation from organizations, I think, because of the exact issue that we're working to address, this rebuilding trust. They're like, I don't know if I want to hand over my young adults to sit down with these off-duty officers. So we actually, our problem was not in getting people who were not favorable, was just, convincing people that it was a safe space to be in. And that, they could come and voice these opinions and they wouldn't be seen as attacks, but as learning opportunities. And I think good food really helped to reel them in as well.
Great. And I commend the department for having officers involved and really, being able to share their opinions. And sometimes they may not agree with people in the community, but I think it's so important for all of us to be able to have constructive dialogue with each other. So really appreciate that concept. And, with regards to some of the recommendations, one thing I'll, work with the department to do is understand where they are already, because I'll say with the wellness and mental health, the department's behavioral science services is one of the best in the nation. They are a model, and so there is a lot of wellness programs and mental health availability already. Sometimes it might be getting the message out, but I think they also try to do a very good job on that. But I understand sometimes morale is low and things, but I have not heard of another department that focuses on wellness as much as this department and really seen as a leader of people come and learn what is LAPD doing, right? So I want to make sure we acknowledge and uplift the stuff that's already happening. And I saw with a number of your recommendations, it's like continue doing this, right? Like you're on the right path, just invest more. And I'm, fully in favor of, alternative response models. And I think the department's supportive of that. You'll hear officers say if they have opportunities to have other, clinicians available, that's all, always very favorable. I have more concerns about a separate traffic division, but I'll save that for another time. But really appreciate the recommendations, and also we'll look with the department as to like what training is already happening and the connection with like the history of policing, and also with like the resilience training and things like that. And so I think next step, Commissioner Sanchez-Gordon, one of the next steps could be for us to identify with the department where they're at already with some of these recommendations, and then determine, whether to adopt additional recommendations.
I think that's a good idea.
But thank you so much for your time. And Chief, do you have anything to add, Chief Flores?
Yeah. Thank you for the opportunity. I think it just put things in context is when we approached HRC to do these dinner dialogues, it was 2022, 2023. Just a different time and place, and we realized that our officers needed a voice. And so I think that's the really, not only for the community, but it was a time where defund the police was the active narrative. It was a really tough time just to recover post-pandemic. We were just starting to learn how to engage our communities again in person. So I think that was the added benefit, that we also learned about the needs that our officers were needing to voice internally. And I think the beauty of this program was that we did the pre and the post surveys after every session. So we kind of had real-time information about what the temperature was within each bureau. So I would meet then with our former chief of police to go over some of the things that we were seeing. And then I would meet with our Office of Operations direct reports, all the bureau chiefs, and I would circle back with them and give them kind of real-time information about the things that we were hearing and seeing of interest for the community, but also internally. So I think to your point about some of the recommendations that have already been done, there was subsequent training that was put into place, more focus on inclusiveness. And I think from looking at the results of the surveys, it's a product of Generation Z, the community and our officers also that are thriving and needing more communication with their supervisors, and that upward and downward communication and inclusion in decisions that are made. And I think that's where that one comment, a few comments came from, that command staff is out of touch. So I think there are many ways in which we are continuing to really improve on that, whether it be attending more roll calls, vertical staff meetings, more involvement with command staff and the rank and file, which I have seen a huge improvement from the seat that I'm in now.
Wonderful, thank you. And I'll say, as the department continues to, focus on recruiting and retaining, I think events like this both can help with the retention piece of officers feeling more of an understanding of why they're doing the job and meeting, community members and things like that. But also community members get to see what officers do and have a better understanding. And there's so many times when I talk to recruits at graduation and I ask them why do they want to serve, they say that there was some person, another officer that made an impression on them. And so these dinner dialogues is an opportunity for everyone to make an impression on the youth, especially since you're targeting them. So thank you again, and I really appreciate both the work that you've done, the report, and the presentation.
Thank you.
So I think we'll just take a quick 7-minute break or so and come back for item number 4B. Thank you. Okay, we are back in session and we'll move to item 4B, the verbal presentation relative to records and identification division update. And you all are back. You want to introduce yourself one more time? Thank you.
Good morning, Commander Steve Ember, Commanding Officer Support Services Group.
And good morning. I'm Elena Asukan, Police Administrator, Commanding Officer of Records and Identification. I am before you today to provide a 6-month update on Records and Identification. R&I, or Records and Identification, is a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week, 365-day operation. We are one of the only all-civilian commands primarily made up of clerical employees, from entry-level office trainees, administrative clerks, senior administrative clerks, principal clerk police, chief clerk police, and fingerprint identification experts. The work of the staff at R&I is phenomenal. They do a lot of work with the minimal staffing that we have. We support officers out in the field, Custody Services Division, the jails, as well as Angelenos and other government agencies requesting various reports. Unfortunately, with the City of LA's budget shortfalls and the prioritized critical hiring, R&I is overall facing a 40% vacancy rate within the division. Staffing within R&I has been very challenging, and deployment levels are very difficult to maintain. However, my leadership team, along with the Support Services Group Commander Ebrick, we've been working diligently to think outside of the box and look at ways to maintain morale with the division and continue our operations. We are doing our best to accomplish this by looking towards automating processes utilizing the department's new records management system and designing additional modules that could help R&I. There are 5 sections within R&I that supports department employees, other government agencies, as well as community members. We have our vehicle warrants section, which receives calls from officers out in the field and completes the data entry regarding vehicles stolen, recovered, private tow, repossessions, etc. They also input all firearms that are retrieved out in the field. Employees also respond to various teletypes, warrants, and 10-minute hit confirmations that are required from the Department of Justice, as well as restraining orders. Although vehicle warrants just alone, that section faces a 38% vacancy rate in the clerical series, we have been able to overcome the low deployment challenges towards partnerships and automation. Again, I'm very excited to say that with the implementation of the records management system Premier 1, and the introduction of the CLIPS, C-L-I-P-S, I don't know if that's an acronym for something, it's just CLIPS. But it has actually reduced the call wait times of officers reporting stolen or recovered vehicles. Back 6 months ago, I was telling you it was upward of 3 hours. It is now about 1 hour, sometimes less, depending on the call load. The CLIPS application is one of the new systems that the department instituted to replace the Consolidated Crime Analysis Database, or CCAD. CLIPS enables staff to enter vehicle information into the stolen vehicle system for stolen, recovered, felony, impound vehicles, etc. CLIPS also enables users to input information into the firearm system. Additionally, CLIPS even allows for the entry of restraining orders, and that was a recent update to the CLIPS system. Efficiencies using CLIPS has decreased, again, the average time call, thereby decreasing the overall wait time for officers in the field. I also have my criminal history section. Criminal history section inputs all the sex offenders registration into the state's database and works very closely with the REACT teams, which is the department's registration, enforcement, and compliance team, all the coordinators out at the divisions. Additionally, our criminal history section supports custody services division with any changes to booking entries. Recently, with the a new booking module has been developed and implemented in the new records management system, which allows custody services division to directly input changes or entries into the LA County's automated justice information system to update their own booking records. Pending successful implementation of this module of the booking module, we believe CHS's role in this process may be reduced slightly, so we're excited. Criminal identification section, this is our technical side of R&I, which includes our fingerprint identification experts who complete all the 10-print fingerprint cards and responds to hospital bookings to assist with the booking process. The fingerprint identification experts also performs fingerprint comparisons to verify an individual is who they claim, and they work with all the divisions to confirm an individual's identity. With the new RMS booking module, CIS will be significantly impacted, and once implemented, we will see how the new RMS will interact with my technical side, the CIS team. Report services sections, community and report services section outside agencies. These two sections respond to all requests for crime, traffic, arrest reports from community members and various outside agencies. Additionally, these sections are responsible for scanning all reports in the department's digital repository integrated crime and arrest records, which is known as ICARs in the department. These two sections are currently facing a 42% vacancy rate within the sections. With the shortfalls in staffing, there unfortunately is a significant backlog of 28 weeks in responding to report requests from community members and outside agencies. One solution to assist with the shortages is to add additional modules to the records management system to assist with locating the reports in the various systems and possibly add a redaction feature within this module. We are currently working with our IT team to hopefully get a module that will assist us with this. Again, I am thankful for the opportunity to share about the phenomenal men and women of records and identification and all the work that they do on a daily basis, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days of the year to help serve the city of Los Angeles as well as our own department employees. And I thank you for this opportunity, and I'm open for any questions.
Thank you. We'll start with Commissioner Sanchez-Gordon.
Thank you.
Commissioner Garcia.
Thank you for the report. Quick question. So your current lag time for getting reports out to the community is 28 weeks, and you're saying that there's a potential module fix in the system. What's the timeline for the fix, and then what would be the goal in terms of time to respond to providing reports?
So we're working on a module, and we're hoping to get licenses. It depends on funding. This will be the second phase of RMS. So IT, information technology, is looking at other resources and maybe other vendors that can utilize or have a integration of a module that we could use to look at both the RMS system as well as our existing legacy systems for that. I don't have a timeline. I could not tell you. We're hoping in the near future, but our IT team is really looking at services that could help. As far as the backlog, yeah, we'll have to see as it comes up. I mean, definitely the search function will help out because we can, search almost immediately as it provides feedback that these reports most likely match your search, and then we can pull those and do what we need to do to redact and send them out.
If I could
Chief,
just
please.
my compliments to the work that's being done every day by R&I division. Very woefully understaffed, even even before the latest budget news. So we're very thankful for the work that is being done every day on behalf of the residents of Los Angeles. When we try and focus on how do we do better, basically it's going to have to be automation and using machine learning, possibly AI down the road to be able to make us more efficient. Because the reality, without being able to sugarcoat anything, the reality is pretty dire right now with the staffing levels that they're at. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you all, and I echo the chief's comments, and really great work by you all and your small but mighty team. And I don't think that, when we talk about, civilians or professional staff, and knowing that you all are working 24 hours a day as well, and again, really supporting the department in so many ways. So we appreciate you all. And I do think, Chief, just as you were talking, the need to leverage technology during this time is going to be even more magnified. And so to the extent there can be more, new tech is obtained with urgency. And so that we have these fixes to help your team, I think would be very well received. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to regular agenda item 4C, the department's report dated April 16th, 2025, relative to the pilot program for delayed interviews in categorical use of force investigations. Hi all, can you introduce yourselves, please?
Yes, ma'am. Good morning, everyone. I am Captain Bizzolto, the commanding officer at Force Investigation Division, and joining me this morning is Detective 3 Anthony Rowe, Force Investigation Division's training coordinator. So 2024 marked the 20th anniversary of Force Investigation Division as a division. And in that time, we've established ourselves as leaders within our field. FID's success is because of the hard work, integrity, and dedication of our investigators. And I'm grateful to have Detective Rowe joining me this morning. He's been with FID now for 17 years, is a subject matter expert, and he's been crucial in the development of the policy you have in front of you today, him and along with many others at FID. The procedural development phase of this pilot was initiated in November of 2024 with the objectives of being, number one, providing a better investigative product, and two, develop a collaborative and clearly defined written policy, which you have in front of you today. This morning, we are ready to request the Commission formalize this pilot program, which we believe will improve FID's already refined investigative process. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Detective Rowe, who will describe the protocol.
Good morning. Since 2004, when FID was formed, FID has followed a policy and investigative protocol where an officer involved in a categorical use of force, a substantially involved officer, would be continuously monitored by a supervisor until he was interviewed by Force Investigation Division. And that policy investigative protocol served us well. It provided the department timely information, and it contributed to community trust. I will say, since the beginning, we've always received reports from officers and the attorneys of the officers indicating how difficult it is to participate in that most important interview when there's sleep deprivation. Now, it doesn't occur in every case, but it would not be uncommon for an officer to be up for 24 hours by the time they complete their FID interview. And they indicate it's just hard to remain articulate under those conditions. With that said, it was considered a best practice overall, and as we continue through the years using that policy, a number of positive things have occurred. Much as it has nationwide, LAPD has been a leader in de-escalation in the patrol acronym. And that has contributed greatly to the reduction in the number of categoricals. In my tenure alone, the number has been cut in half. When a major incident occurs, the department now pours resources, specialized units into those events, and the vast majority of the time, there's a successful outcome, a peaceful outcome. In the rare instance when a categorical use of force occurs, there's now more officers present at scene than at any time before. And I say that to say this: these investigations are now larger than at any point in FID history. Other positive changes that have come on over the years is the adoption of body-worn video. Now, potentially hundreds of hours of video evidence is available to an FID investigator. However, working with the current policy where the officer is immediately interviewed, the investigator has limited time to go over that body-worn video evidence. It would not be uncommon for an investigator who's conducting the interview that the very first time he's able to see that officer's body-worn video in its entirety is with the attorney and the officer present. The investigator also has limited time to research applicable policy. Because the investigation's occurring simultaneous to the interview of the officer, that investigator doesn't know everything the crime scene provided as far as information and evidence. He doesn't know what the suspect reported as what occurred. He doesn't know what the community members who witnessed the event reported occurred. Doesn't know what the witnessing officers said happened. In addition to body-worn video and digital in-car evidence, there's now a prevalence of home security video. Almost at every scene, we have security video from residences, and that often provides the best perspective of the event. That requires a video canvas. The investigator doesn't have time to see that video evidence because the interview is being conducted immediately. FID feels if, under certain circumstances, if interviews were allowed to be delayed up to 72 hours, it would allow the investigator to get a 360-degree understanding of the event, taking into account the video evidence, the witness testimony, what the suspect said, and form a comprehensive interview plan. And this would increase the already high-quality interviews that FID produces. It would allow for a more thoroughness. I will say it's interesting, under our current model, where we're interviewing the subject of the investigation first, it's unlike any other interview on the department. Typically, you want to know all the facts and all the information available before you conduct that interview. So under this pilot program, there are some safeguards. It would only occur in certain instances. For instance, we would want clear body-worn video, or I'll say any type of video evidence, clear video evidence of the suspect's actions, the officer's actions, and the application of force. We'd also want the absence of any significant investigative concerns or other exigency. If that exists, we would propose to do a delayed interview within a 72-hour window. That would be with the full concurrence of the Inspector General's office. The police special investigator at scene would be part of that collaboration. If in the rare instance there's not a police special investigator at scene, we would telephonically notify the Assistant Inspector General and email the Inspector General of the decision to proceed forward. But again, it would be a collaborative decision with their input. All other protocols would remain the same for FID. The officer would still participate in a walkthrough, a magazine count. They'd be photographed. There'd be an equipment inventory. And before that officer left the scene, he would receive a written order to not discuss the incident in any manner, written or verbal. They would sign it, and he would have a specified interview time. When that officer returns for his interview, on tape, the investigator would inquire if he followed that order and if there was any incidental contact with information on the case. For instance, was the officer in his living room and started to hear the beginning of a news report covering the incident before he could turn the TV off. That would be fully vetted out in the interview. We feel under these circumstances where there's clear video evidence, this would greatly improve the quality, which is already a high quality investigation, to another level. And we'd ask to move forward for a 6-month pilot program. At the end of that program, I would report back to you the status of the pilot program, if it was successful. I, as the training coordinator, will be reviewing all substantially involved officer interviews for the quality of the interview, the completeness, and ensure the integrity of the investigation is maintained throughout.
So with that, we are prepared to answer any questions.
Wonderful, thank you. I'll start with Commissioner Sanchez-Gordon.
Talked about safeguards. You want clear body worn camera video and then the surrounding video, but that has to be in place. And what was the other safeguard you talked about that involves the Inspector General's role?
Yes, so it would be clear video evidence of any type that covers the officer's suspect's actions as well as the application of force. The decision to proceed forward with a delayed interview would be with the full concurrence of the Inspector General's office. It would be a collaborative process at scene discussing, we believe this fits the criteria, we'd like to move forward with a delayed interview. They would weigh in if they agree. That would be a safeguard. The other safeguard is before the officer leaves the scene, he's received a direct order not to discuss or communicate about the event in any manner until he's interviewed by Force Investigation Division at that specified date. Additionally, they won't watch their body-worn video the day of the incident. They will not watch their body-worn video or digital in-car video until right before the scheduled interview.
Which would be within that 72-hour period.
That's correct, within that 72-hour period. And if there was the rare instance were to extend beyond the 72-hour period, the Inspector General's office would receive immediate telephonic notification, and that'd be a rare instance, but if an officer contracted strep throat and was unable to be interviewed, it's something unforeseen.
Commissioner, if I may add, so in terms of our Inspector General counterparts, the investigators are there embedded with our investigations at scene in real time. So they are running parallel with our investigation, and they have access to the evidence and the body-worn video in real time with FID investigators. So any questions or any concerns are vetted out in real time with our IG counterparts. So that's another safeguard we have. So at the conclusion of that investigation that night, which sometimes takes hours, we should be in lockstep with our IG counterparts on where we're going with the delayed interview component.
You know, nobody really knows the intensity of these investigations until you begin to see in our discussions and in evaluating what happened. You know, all the steps that are taken and all the people involved in these investigations, and so this is I say that because I am surprised at how detailed everything is when there is a categorical use of force or officer-involved shooting where FID is involved. But I guess I just need to know that this pilot program is specifically being presented and requested because the 72-hour, up to 72-hour wait for an interview, because now you have access to all this other resource material, the body-worn camera, the digital car video, and whatever other video is around in the surrounding area where the incident occurred. Is that correct?
That is 100% correct. This is completely investigatively driven. When the original policy was drafted, those weren't prevalent. You had maybe a liquor store security video with a VHS tape, much different times. And we're simply wanting to use the pilot program to advance policy, taking into account all the technology that's advanced throughout the years.
Last question, and thank you for clarifying that. You mentioned that at the interview of the officer, that there is the attorney present for the officer. Is that common?
Yes, that occurs in every case that attorneys provided by the Police Protective League, and they're present at every
okay, so the
every
attorney
interview.
present is someone from the league?
Or provided through the league. And I will clarify, an attorney's provided for the officers that actually used force. An employee representative is provided for witnessing officers.
Okay. Okay. Let me see. When will this start? If we have a 6-month period, and you're going to report at the end of 6 months, are we starting like now, or has it started, or?
Yes, ma'am, we are prepared to start immediately. We have the forms created. We have the notifications ready for the Inspector General's office.
Well, and just to clarify, this has already started, right? So let's make sure
It
we.
is ongoing.
Yes.
The procedural development phase began in November of 2024, and we're now at the stage now where we have a measurement component that we are prepared to report back in 6 months to the commission on the success of the program, in hopes of having a written policy in front of you that is stood the test of that pilot period.
So 6 months from November of 2024?
It can be, yeah, absolutely. We can come back in 6 months from that November period and be prepared to discuss the success of it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Garcia?
So in terms of, you mentioned, and it's mentioned in the document, and it has the quality and completeness of the involved officer's interview. And so what are the factors that will be used to measure the quality of the interview during or at time of report back so that we clearly understand and improvements?
Yes. Did it cover all applicable policy? Was everything fully vetted out, the complete thoroughness? Now that the investigator will have a full understanding of the event from beginning to end, was everything covered? Right now, when an investigator interviews an officer, the most informed person in that room is the officer. The investigator only knows to ask what he has seen on that body-worn video, not all the other perspectives of the event. So we would expect that all aspects of the investigation be covered.
I would add to, from my chair, I will be looking at the absence of secondary interviews and supplemental requests. What does that mean? So whenever we have a request for a supplemental component to the investigation, that means to us that we missed a point in the investigation. Whenever we have to go back to do a secondary interview, a third interview, sometimes, that says to me that we haven't thoroughly done a proper interview at the front end. So the absence of those two aspects for me is another component that I'll be looking at.
Yeah, and you might ask, why is a second interview problematic? Well, a substantial amount of time's passed since the first interview, so memory fades, but also things could be introduced to the officer that didn't actually occur, but he received in other manners. The interview's more pure the closer it is to the event.
So if we can get, if you all can develop some kind of list of categories that can actually be measured and say, okay, in this part of the interview, we expect to see this improvement. The secondary interview, that could be interpreted in many different ways where you just don't request a second interview. So if there are ways that we can really compare and see whether this is an improvement, we'd appreciate that. The other part of this too, if I can make it, request a change here in language, so on page 3, the document, there's a statement that says that the officers involved or the officer should not discuss the incident with anyone other than the representative or attorney or FID investigator. Can we add a mental health professional?
Of course.
Yes, sir.
It's page 3, I believe.
It's on page 2, Commissioner.
Yeah. And is there any concern about them contacting mental health before an interview?
No.
No, not from my end. I would see that as privileged information that wouldn't be shared with us.
Right. And then if we can get just more information on, there's several schools of thoughts in terms of sleep cycles. Is it one sleep cycle? Does that provide better memory recollection, or is 2 sleep cycles? So any research that you all come across during this 6-month period that will also help us understand how this is an improved outcome for us. Thank you.
Sir.
Okay, thank you so much for both the presentation and the report. I want to first just say, commend the Force Investigation Division for all of the work that they do in investigating these officer-involved shootings and categorical uses of force. We are always very impressed by the thoroughness of the investigations. And at one point, if there's a way to demonstrate to an open session kind of the lengths that you go to in a way that can educate the public, I think it would be good to think about how to do that. Because it is amazing how much evidence you collect from a variety of trying to track down every potential witness in the community, trying to identify every piece of video, social media, things that are posted, about an incident that really help give us the best information to make the decision. So thank you for all of that work. And thank you for the presentation, Detective, especially about the going through and explaining some of the benefits to investigations in particular. And it is unusual to start with a target when you don't have the full information, and a lot of times you want to understand all of the information before asking someone the most important questions. So with regards to, I just had, one additional modification to the actual notice that would go out. So we'll kind of note the mental health professional edit on page 2 of the report, but also, when we talk about the eligibility for a delayed interview and having some very clear video evidence depicting both the officer's actions, the subject's actions, and the application of force. And you said something verbally here that I think is important but not reflected in the notice itself, is that on determining whether those factors have been met to delay an interview, you would get the concurrence of the Inspector General's office. And so I'd like a sentence added after that third bullet point that, before an interview is delayed based on these factors, the department shall notify the Office of Inspector General and obtain concurrence in the decision. Because I think that will be the important safeguard to ensure that there is sufficient video evidence. We don't want to be at a point down the road where the Inspector General comes back and says, oh, you know what, for this one, they shouldn't have delayed the interviews. So that's what I want to avoid, and I think everyone wants, the most thorough investigation. And on that note, in terms of the, maintaining the integrity of the investigation, given that the officers will be given a written warning not to speak with anyone else, they must understand and should understand that that written order will have consequences if violated and could result in discipline. So they can't be talking to the other officers involved. They can't be talking to their supervisor. They can't be seeking advice from a mentor or other, person other than who is specifically reflected in the order that they can talk to. Okay, so with those two modifications, and I will say, I understand that, as you were scoping out this concept and you started the pilot already, that in the future and for the chief and for all things within the department, before any policies are changed or pilot programs are initiated, that's a deviation from policy, I'd ask that it come to the commission first. And then we will determine whether or not to adopt it. But for this purpose, I would move that we adopt the department's report with the sorry, 1 second. And we'll do the report back 6 months from now, which I think is how the report currently is written.
Okay.
So that will give it a little bit more time, and you can, in terms of identify, I think one of the things that Commissioner Garcia was talking about is identifying, how do you prove success, or how do you identify whether or not the interviews are better. And I think sometimes also asking the investigators of what's the additional piece of evidence that you had now that you likely wouldn't have had on that night, can be an additional kind of factor that can impact things. But I do encourage you to think about how do you demonstrate the better investigative results. And I'll say for the Inspector General's office, you don't have to wait 6 months to tell us if you have any concerns at any point in time. If there are concerns with this pilot program, please alert us to them and we'll address them in real time. So with that, I would move that we adopt the department's report initiating the pilot program with the two modifications discussed, both with regards to on page 1 of the report adding after that third bullet point, before an interview is delayed based on these factors, the department shall notify the Office of Inspector General and obtain concurrence in the decision. And on page 2 of the report, adding that the Force Investigation Division investigators shall order the officers not to discuss the incident with anyone other than their representative, attorney, mental health professional, or the FID investigators. Is there a second? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, board report is, or the department's report is approved. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And with that, we will go into closed session for items 5A, 1, and 2.
The Board of Police Commissioners will now recess into closed session to discuss agenda items 5A1 and 5A2 in accordance with Government Code 54957.
Okay, the commission has returned from closed session, and I'll ask the executive director, Mr. Sibley, to please report on items 5A1 and 5A2.
Thank you, Commissioner Shields. So, at the regular meeting of the Board of Police Commissioners on April 22nd, 2025, during the closed session, the board made the following findings by a 3-0 vote. So for 5A1, which is officer-involved shooting 028-24, for tactics, tactical debrief, 1 police officer 2. For drawing and exhibition of a firearm, in policy, no further action, 1 police officer 2. For non-lethal use of force, in policy, no further action, 1 police officer 2. And for lethal use of force, in policy, no further action, 1 police officer 2. Moving on to 5A2, which is non-tactical unintentional discharge, 029-24. For tactics, tactical debrief, 1 police officer 2. And for unintentional discharge, negligent discharge, administrative disapproval, 1 police officer 2. And that concludes the readout.
Thank you. At this time, I move to adjourn the meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, meeting adjourned. Thank you.